Hi everyone, welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for first-year schools. The focus of this webinar is to prepare for Advisory Council Meeting 4. The focus of this meeting is resource expansion and priority goals. My name is Sue Reynolds. I'm the Executive Director of the American Student Achievement Institute, and it is a pleasure to be with you once again. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. We'll begin like we always do with just a quick review of the RSC beliefs, process, and products. And then, as we just said, this month we're focusing on resource expansion, which is my favorite topic and my favorite meeting of all of them that we do with our advisory council. And then we'll also look at, once of our resources are expanded, especially the resource of time, then we'll start talking about, okay, how many of your goals that you established at your last meeting can you really tackle as priority goals? We'll walk through meeting 4 with your advisory council, then we'll talk about submissions and the rubric for those submissions, and then look at the online system. Okay, so quick review, RSC beliefs. School counseling, we believe, school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So the focus with this is really that everything that we're doing is designed to help kids make good choices, and because of that, student achievement will go up. This is our school counseling impact pyramid, and we're looking, we believe that the reason that school counseling impacts achievement is because through sound guidance and counseling activities, students will make better choices, and then as a result of those choices, achievement goes up. And then when we're designing our program this year, we started out at the beginning of the year by looking at our school's achievement goals that were in our school improvement plan, and then we said, what are the choices that kids need to make in order to reach those achievement goals? Those became your program goals. And then we're going to fine-tune those into priority goals. And then later, a couple meetings from now, we'll start looking at what activities do we need to put in place in order to help kids make those choices. Okay, in terms of the process, we started this year just in getting ready. Getting ready meant putting together a steering team, collecting student data, doing some self-studies, and convening an advisory council that was really a broad-based advisory council that represented both stakeholder groups in the school but also stakeholder groups in the community. We met with your advisory council in September to just do an introduction. We talked about terminology and just the focus of school counseling. Then in October we got together again to really talk about, as a council, what are our dreams for kids? What is our dream student achievement data, dream ideal adult practices, ideal student practices, and then what are the core convictions that make us have those ideals? So we established a council or a school community vision for student success. Then at our last meeting, we talked about our program goals. We really looked at every grade level, what are the choices that kids need to make in order to reach our school's academic goals? Do they need to choose to turn in homework or submit a FAFSA or visit a college or ask for help when they're confused, take tough courses? All of those choices, the gazillion choices that kids need to make well in order to be successful at school and to prepare for success in post-secondary. My guess is that most of you, when you came out of that meeting in November, you had a lot of program goals, 60, 70, 80 different program goals representing all of the choices that kids need to make when they're in your building in order to be successful at school. We also know that it's not possible to focus on all of those gazillion things at once. So today we're going to prepare for your next meeting, which is to look at, first of all, how do we expand our resources? Can we get more time? Can we get more materials or more funding? We know that the more we expand our resources, the more of those program goals we'll be able to tackle in a big way next year. So first part of this meeting is to expand our resources, And then once we have talked with our council and we've figured out ways to get more time and more funding and more materials, more hands, then we're going to go back to the programs goal list and say, okay, how many priority goals can we really tackle realistically next year? It may be that your school just decides to focus on one goal next year and to really do that well so that every student in the building is making that choice. That's fine. One priority goal is fine. 2, 3. Normally we don't have schools that go bigger than 3 priority goals because we're really expecting your program to put a lot of energy into those those priority goals. So 1, 2, 3 priority goals out of the gazillion program goals is a good thing. Okay, so that's what we're working on this time. Then at our next meeting in February, so a couple months from now, we're going to look at those small number program priority goals, 1, 2, or 3 priority goals, and we're going to say what's getting in the way. Why aren't kids making those choices? We'll look at guidance data that will help us understand what knowledge kids have. We'll look at counseling data that will help us understand if there's social or personal issues that are getting in the way of kids making those choices. And we'll also look at opportunity data to see if maybe kids have the knowledge, they don't have personal social issues, but we're just not even giving them the opportunity to participate in some of the programs or activities that we know lead to academic success. So those barriers to the goals we call root causes. So we'll identify root causes in February, and then in March we'll talk about, okay, what are we going to do about those root causes if the kids don't have knowledge or they have personal or social issues or we're not giving them the opportunities. What are we going to do about that? And we'll design guidance, counseling, advocacy, and management activities that will address those root causes and open the door so that kids can hit those priority goals. Okay, and then the last part that we'll do at the end of the school year is just preparation for those activities. So we'll write guidance lessons, develop a calendar, create a budget. So we're preparing for those activities. Okay, let's see, any questions right now? We've been through this a couple times before, so I'm not anticipating any questions. And I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so this month's task is to talk about expanding our resources, especially time, and then really looking at, given the resources that we have, how many goals can we identify as priority goals? Okay, so, oops. And let's then begin with a walkthrough of meeting 4. Okay, so I'm going to go to the PowerPoint that goes with meeting 4. And there we go. Okay, so this is the walkthrough for meeting 4. So we are with your advisory council and we're welcoming them, and we're explaining that today's agenda is going to be a review, and then we're going to talk about how can we expand the resources that are available so we can tackle as many of those goals as possible in a big way that we identified last year or last meeting. Okay, so process review, this is what we just went over, so we'll fly through that. This slide is just, again, helping people understand that there's a product that comes out of each of these discussions. So far you've had 2 products. You've got a vision statement and you've got program goals. I would suggest printing a copy of the program goals from the online system and having those to just pass out at the meeting so everybody has that. And we're actually going to use that report later in this meeting, but you could draw people's attention to it here. And then today there will be 2 products that come out of today's meeting. One is a resource expansion plan, and then the other one are your priority goals. Okay, so today we're working on resources and priority goals. And the priority goals are a subset of your program goals. So we're just trying to figure out of all your program goals, how many can we tackle in a big way for next year? And it could be 1, 2, or 3. I'd encourage you not to take on too many priority goals, because if you do, you'll just end up doing everything in a mediocre way. You'll touch some kids but not all kids, or you'll touch some kids but not in a significant way. So I'd much rather have you do one priority goal and really make sure that it's touching every kid in the building than to have a gazillion goals that you do, in a mediocre way. So now those priority goals, whatever you identify as the priority goal, next year you're going to implement extra activities to address those goals. So you're sharing this with your advisory council. And then also for those priority goals, you're going to monitor data for those goals to see if your activities later are having an impact. So you're going to have baseline data for those priority goals. The next year you'll implement the activities, and then at the end of next school year you'll collect data again to see if those activities made an impact. Okay, this is kind of a key concept to share with your advisory council, is that the number of priority goals that you have is limited by the time and resources that are available. So time and resources limit the number of goals that you can identify as priority goals. So today's activities are two things. First of all, we're going to see, can we get more time and energy? Can we get more resources, more funding? So we're going to expand everything. Then we're going to select a small number of program goals to become priority goals. Okay, so first let's look at the resource expansion plan. These are all of the resources that are typically available to school counselors. Time, and then time, of course, impacts your student to counselor ratio. School resources, community resources, space, technology, materials that you have, supplies, professional development opportunities, the perception, your reputation of the school counselors we feel is a resource, and then the funding that you have available. So all different kinds of resources, when one or more of these are limited, it impacts your ability to provide sound school counseling activities for kids, especially the first two, the time that you have available and then your student to counselor ratio. Okay, so the next few slides we want to just help your advisory council understand what resources you have available. So this is your counseling department FTE, your full-time equivalency. So on this table ahead of time, you would have written in the first column the names of your counselors. In the second time, what their FTE or full-time equivalency would be. So a counselor that's a full-time counselor on paper would have a full-time equivalency of 1. Then you want to identify the percentage of time that the counselors spend doing counseling tasks. So up until now you've been collecting your time, you're doing your time task logs. At this point we want to figure out what percentage of time are all of your counselors together, or in this case individually, spending on guidance, counseling, advocacy, and management, so everything but non-program. So if you are a counselor who's spending 20% of your time doing non-program stuff, you'd be spending 80% of your time performing counseling tasks. So then to figure out your adjusted FTE, because if you're only spending 80% of your time doing counseling tasks, you're not really a full-time counselor. So we just take your FTE and then we multiply it times the percentage of time that you're spending doing counseling tasks, and that becomes your adjusted FTE. So if you're spending 80% of your time doing counseling tasks, your adjusted FTE would be 0.8. Then we want to, for your program, for your whole department, add up everybody's FTEs and then just write that in the total FTE at the bottom. And I think you'll find that some of you spend very little time in non-program tasks, so your FTE is going to be close to what it is on paper, 1 or a half of your half-time counselor. But many of you will find that your FTE, your adjusted FTE, is not 1 because you're spending time doing things that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling. Okay, so that's the counseling department FTE. Then we also want to help your advisory council understand what your counselor's student ratio is. So to calculate that, you're going to take your total number of students and then your total counselors, but use the adjusted FTE there. For counselors that don't spend all their time doing counseling, school counseling tasks, make sure you're using their adjusted FTE in the total counselor column. Then to figure out your ratio, it's just the number, divide it out and figure out how many students there are per counselor in your building. And it may be that, your ratio is extremely high when you consider that your counselors are not full-time counselors. So in other words, if I have 400 students and I have one full-time counselor, my ratio is 1 to 400. But if that counselor is spending half their time doing non-program tasks, then my ratio is really a half to 400 or 1 to 800. So an interesting thing to look at, and I think will kind of open some eyes regarding just exactly the services and personnel that are available for your students. Okay, the next couple slides are just kind of easy ones. Does the school counseling support staff position exist? Yes or no. Make sure to change this so it reflects your situation. Non-program tasks. Let me go back a couple. I can almost guarantee you that when on this slide, if your FTE is not 1 after it's adjusted, people are going to say, well, what in the heck are you doing? So let's be prepared. Here's just a list of all the non-program tasks that have lowered your FTEs. So the reason you can share with people, the reason you're not a full-time counselor, even though you're on paper you're full-time, is because you're spending all of this time doing things that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling, so you're not really a full-time counselor. Okay, then on time, on this slide, before we show people what your actual time percentages breakdowns are, we want to ask people what they would like it to be. So the desired amount of time that your advisory council would have the counselors spend on guidance, counseling, advocacy, management, and non-program. You may need to quickly kind of review the definition of those. And then just give people time on a piece of scrap paper to write down those 5 words, and for each of them personally, how would they break up the school counselor's time? Remember, they're just coming out of that discussion about program goals, so I think they're probably going to be realistic about the percentage of time, ideally, that they would desire you to spend in guidance and counseling and advocacy. Okay, so after we've thought about that, then we want to see what the whole group feels like. So this is a really, I think, kind of fun consensus building tool. Basically, there's 5 posters. You'll put those posters up on the wall. Everybody gets 1 sticky dot, and they come up to, 1 sticky dot for each poster. Then they come up to the poster and they put their sticky dot above the percentage of time that they would vote, if you will, for you to spend on that type of activity. So for example, the first poster that's showing here is the guidance poster. So if I thought that school counselors should be spending 55% of their time on guidance, I would put my sticky dot above the 55% column. So basically, let me go and show you when you get your sticky dots on, you're going to come up with something that looks like this. It won't be probably a perfect bell curve, but you can kind of see where the majority of folks think that the counselor should be spending their time. So in this case, the majority of the dots are on the 50%. I've got a few that are higher than that, a few are lower than that, but I could pretty much ask the group, is it okay if we say 50% on guidance? Because each individual has to end up with time that adds to 100% and not over 100%, when you get to these instagraphs, when you add up all the bell curves, of the points on all the bell curves will add up basically to 100%. You may need to tweak a point or two, but they'll all add up to 100%. Okay, so let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so we've got all those sticky dots up, and we've now have people that we now know what the belief of the group is in terms of what the desired time use times are. So I would just go ahead right now and as you're talking with the people, you've just done those Instagraphs, I would just type the information right in there and whatever they've said. Then um, after you have the desired in there, then type in the actual and show people what it actually is, and that will give you, for some people, give them a real aha of what they want you to be doing and then what you are doing. Again, when you get down to the non-program, again, if your non-program percentage is really high, people are going to ask you, what are you doing? That's all non-program. And people's wheels will start to turn. The principal will start thinking, can I assign these to somebody else? People will start thinking, that's not right, that's not how we want to use our school counselors, and they'll be thinking, are there things that I could be doing to help? So this is a real key right here. On purpose, we had people define their desired before we announced what the actual was, because had you announced the actual, they probably wouldn't have gone up to 55 here. They would have gone something closer than 20. So in order to not be influenced by your actual data, we want to make sure that we don't share that until after they have identified what the desired time percentages are. Okay. So that's counselor time use, and again, we're looking at that time as a resource. So next resource is your budget. We'd like to calculate that as the per pupil expenditure. So what is the total budget that you have for school counseling? If you aren't given a budget, like the math department is given a budget, you might just go back a year, maybe 2 years, and just calculate what were you allowed to purchase and how much did all that cost. And then put in total number of students, do the math, and come up with your per pupil expenditure. We actually did this for a lot of schools a couple of years ago, just a quick little study, and in that quick little study the per pupil expenditure was 56 cents per student. So that also is kind of an eye-opener. It'll also help your business community understand that, like for me, I think my total budget was $500 per student. For a large business, $500 is a drop in the bucket, and if someone will give you $500, that could double your budget for your program. So again, this slide really helps your community members understand in some cases how little funding you have, and also how what may seem like something small to them would be like $1 million to you. So hopefully there will be some funding coming in for some of you as you present this data. Okay, and then another resource is the network that you have. So on this slide we're looking at who do you network with on a regular basis. And we've just kind of filled in some things for you to start you out with here. You may not meet with your district counselors. You may not meet with your parent-teacher association. So edit this to meet your situation, of course. So that's school networking. And then the next one is community networking. So you're looking at who do you network with in the community, your Chamber of Commerce, your local mental health association, youth service providers, just who are you networking with on a regular basis. For a lot of counselors, I find that there is no community networking at all, and it's a shame because there's a lot of partnerships you could be building. There's a lot of teamwork that you could be doing in terms of helping kids master the guidance indicators, but if you're not networking with your community organizations, that's not going to happen. So we just want to get that information out there as well. Then another resource that you have are people that will help you deliver parts of your program. So in this slide, you're just saying, what are teachers helping with? My guess is if you're in an elementary school, you have elementary teachers that are talking about careers or talking about personal social skills. So that, they're doing guidance lessons. So you could add that in there. Advocacy, are teachers helping you manage your program? Probably aren't going to have teachers doing counseling, although you might if they're involved in a teacher advisor program or something like that where it's level two service. Okay, and then additional activities are provided by community members. In counseling, for example, your community mental health agencies might be providing counseling. You might have private counselors in the area that are providing counseling. You might have in guidance a Boy Scout troop that does a merit badge on careers. So how are the community members providing activities that are also a resource that you can draw from? Okay, and then finally, or maybe not finally, but next is professional development. We've written in here for you some of the more common professional development events that you could check off that you attend or take out if you don't attend them. Again, in a study that we did a couple of years ago, we found that the vast majority of school counselors don't participate in any professional development for a variety of reasons. It may be funding, it may be that your principal will let you out of the building, lots of different reasons. But this then will help people to say, well, if you're not participating in professional development, this will help your community say, well, how come, why not? And then you could say, well, I can't afford it. And then hopefully somebody will step up to say, we could provide this registration fee for you. Or I can't get time out of the building, and hopefully then the administration will see if you're going to be current, you've got to participate in professional development, so they'll decide to let you out. So, okay. So professional development, and then additional resources, space, so here's typical things that counselors have available to them. Technology, do you have these things? Materials, this may be college handbooks, it may be software programs, it's just other materials that you have available. Supplies, once in a while we run across counselors that aren't provided with supplies. And then finally, the perceptions of the school counselors. So in this, this data is actually a report that the computer will spit out based on questions that students answered during the RSC survey, or in Indiana, the Learn More survey. So there's a report that you can get to in the survey results that's called the Student's Perception of Their School Counselor Report. And basically we're asking the students their perceptions of the counselor's skills, their knowledge, and also their how their counselors feel about kids. Do they like kids? Are they helpful? That kind of thing. We aligned the questions, the survey questions in this section, with the licensing standards from several states, and we're just asking kids if they believe that their counselors have these attributes. Now, I want to put a little warning with this one. I'm thinking of a school counseling program at a school in Indiana that, in my opinion, is one of the best school counseling programs in the state. And when their students took this survey, the students just had horrible things to say. They said that their counselors didn't know anything about careers and academic opportunities. They said their counselors didn't care about them. They didn't know how to do personal social counseling. And I know those counselors, that's not true. So those counselors, bless their hearts, they said, you know, we know that we're good counselors. We know we have a good program. But if the perception is that we don't care about kids, that's an issue. They said students are not going to come in to see us. Students aren't going to take what we say with any credibility if they don't think we're knowledgeable. So what they did as a result of going through all of this was they did a lot of marketing activities to help their students and their parents and their community understand the qualifications that they had, the training that they had. And I remember specifically in terms of, do the counselors like kids and they have time for kids, they said, well, you know, every time we talk to people, we're always saying how busy we are. It's no wonder people don't think think that we don't have time for them because we're always saying how busy we are. And they said, that's true, we are busy. But they said, we're not going to say that anymore. We're going to help every person feel when they walk into our office that there's nothing we would like to better do than to be with that person. So that was a goal that they had, and in the data from the coming years after that, they were successful in changing their perception. So I say that's a long story, but I say that to just as a warning. If you don't have positive data here, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a good counselor. It might be that just there's a perception that you're not a sound counselor. So take that with a grain of salt, decide what you're going to do about it, and then look at it realistically too. Maybe, there are some skills that you need to work on. So at any rate, so last resource then is the perception of counselors. Okay, so we're going through all those resources, and now we want to look at what are the resource priorities. So there's an Instagraph that you have available. It lists all of the resources from the staff, time, budget, networking, professional development. And what we're doing on this poster is just asking people, besides the 10 things that we just went over, are there any other resources that we should be adding to this list that we think the counselors need? And if so, then on number down there below the perception of counselors, we'll be adding those in. And then we're just doing an Instagraph to see, what do we need to improve the most in terms of our resources. Okay, so my guess is it's probably going to end up being time. Might end up being funding also, but in most schools, time is the big issue. So this is the next discussion. This is also a poster, and this is just an informal discussion. So we're going to write in the first column the resource that we're trying to get, so it's time, and then in the next column it says, is this something that we're going to work on next year? Yes. And then what's the action plan? How are you going to get more time? And hopefully some of your teachers or your administration will jump in to say, okay, we can reassign some of this, or we'll volunteer to do this. In my school, I just loved my teachers. Our athletic director stepped up and said, okay, I'll take over state testing. An English teacher said, I'll take on graduation management and facilitation of graduation. Just everybody started to look at where could they tackle some of those non-program things so that I would, and the counselors would have more time counseling. So what's the action plan? And then on the last column, the target resource level, that's where do you want to be a year from now. So maybe instead of spending 20% of your time with kids and parents and those guide counseling activities, you would spend 50% or 70%. I encourage you to make small steps. You're probably not going to let go. If you have a lot of non-program, you're not going to let go of it all overnight. But as long as you're making progress, and it took me 7 years to go from 10% of my time with kids to 90% of my time with kids. That was a 7-year process of letting go of something, finding someone else to take on some non-program stuff every year. On line 2 then, you'd write the next highest thing, maybe funding. How are you going to get more money? Next one is 3 is your next highest resource, but maybe on that one you've decided, okay, if we tackle the first 2, we don't need to tackle the next one. So it's written down as a resource in terms of the priorities, but you're deciding not to do that next year, not to work on that next year. One thing I forgot to say at the top of the page, your current time use and your desired time use goes up there. That's just a reminder to people as you're working that this is a resource that we need to look at. So, okay. Then, so we're expanding our resources. Now we're knowing that we are going to have more time, hopefully. We may have more funding. We may, be working on our reputation, on people's perception of our program. Whatever we're going to do, we have a plan in place for expanding our resources. Now we want to go back to our goals and figure out, okay, given what we know now about our resources and how they're going to increase, and it may be that they don't increase at all. It may be that nobody comes up with ideas. But the idea is, now that we know the resources that we have, how many of these goals can we tackle as priority goals? So, given that we have identified many choices that students must make in order to be successful in school and prepare for post-secondary, and given that our students make some choices at greater rates than other choices, and given that we have limited resources, especially time and funding, which 1 to 3 student choices from our last meeting should we take on as priority as we design our school counseling program for next year? Okay, so step 1 of this is to pass out a list of all of your program goals that you identified at your last meeting. This is really easy to do after you've entered them into the computer. Just print the program goals report, and here's the report that spits out. So this is going to list all of the 70, 80, 60, however many goals that you have, and come back. And it'll list the goals. So over here it'll list the grade level that you have those goals for, which student groups, and if this is a goal that related to survey data. In other words, it was a suggested goal, then you took one of the suggested goals. Survey data comes with that goal. So based on the survey, we've identified on here that what percentage of students report that they're making that choice. So for example, if we're just looking at those first 2 goals, almost always turn my homework on time, well, yeah, that's really important to raising achievement. But look at the data. 83% of the kids already say that they're doing that. If I look at the next one, apply for a merit-based scholarship, maybe that's not quite as important as turning in homework is to your advisory council, but given the fact that only 29% of the students are doing that, it may kind of up that a little bit in the degree of importance that they assign to that goal. So we're looking at the goals and we're thinking about how important is that goal to raising student achievement, but then we're also looking at the data to see how much of an issue is that goal right now. So people are looking at this, they're reviewing it individually, so you're giving them maybe 20 minutes to just look through that. I'd suggest that they asterisks, put a star next to any of the goals that they think should be priority goals to start to narrow it down. And then step 2 is just to discuss, given the degree to which our students are already making or not making sound choices in areas that impact achievement, and given the amount of time and other resources that we have available, first of all, how many priority choices should we tackle? Remember, any choice that you tackle is going to be done in a big way. So it's not, just we're going to say, oh, here's a priority goal, and then you're going to just do this little tiny thing about it. No, you're going to really implement maybe 6, 7 different activities. And maybe it's not just you implementing activities, but it's the teachers and it's your community. It's everybody rallying around that priority goal and hitting it hard so that you really are impacting every student in the building, and you should be able to see that data change a year from now. So you're going to say, let's only tackle 1 priority goal for next year, maybe 2. And then in my own program, we did 3. But that was kind of pushing it. And I'm real happy with 1. We have lots of schools that do 1. So, and then after you identify how many, then it's a matter of just discussing and talking out, okay, which goal should be priority. And it's just a discussion to do that. Okay. Then the last step in step 3 is we've got baseline data. One thing on baseline data I didn't say, let me go back. We only have baseline data if you used a suggested program goal. If you made up your own program goal, then you're going to have to somehow collect data for that goal. So find something to count to help you determine if students are making that choice. And if there's not something to count, you can always do survey. You could always ask students, let's say what your goal was to decrease or increase the percentage of students who never got in a fist fight. You could just survey students, did you hit anybody this year? So you could collect data that way. Okay, so so as the last step, once we know what the priority goal is, then we need to put data to that priority goal. And the data the data statement has 4 parts to it. The first thing you're going to say is which students are going to be involved in reaching this goal. It may be all of your students, it may be just your 3rd graders, it may be just your free and reduced lunch kids. It depends on who you have that goal for. what's the choice that you want them to make. So it's very concrete. We want them to choose to turn in their homework, choose to visit a college campus, choose to ask for help when they're confused. What's the choice? And then the current percentage that are making that choice. You can get that from data that you've collected or from the RSC survey. And then a target choice. So after you really, really, really hit this priority goal hard, how high do you think you can get that choice in a year? In my program, our first choice that we wanted kids to make, this is a gazillion years ago, but we wanted them to take algebra. And at the time, there was just a handful of kids taking algebra, but we knew how hard we were going to hit it. We made that percentage really high. I think we jumped to 90% in a year because we knew we were putting everybody in algebra, providing extra help so that they could be successful and all that. But it was going to be a big, big push. So don't be afraid to make that target big. On the other hand, if it's not going to be so big of a push, don't put it up to 90% if you really think with the push that you're going to make that you can only get it to 50. So, it's kind of, you have to evaluate how much time and energy are we going to put in on this target, and then realistically, with a lot of hard work, how high can we get that target. Okay, so here's just some examples. In elementary examples, increasing the percentage of kindergartners who have fewer than 10 absences per year. Current data is 87%, target data is 95%. Fifth graders who start saving for post-secondary education, starting at 18% and then going to 75%. Middle school examples, seventh graders who take a career interest inventory, 20% to 100%. High school examples, juniors who enroll in an AP or dual credit course, 33% to 50%. So that's kind of how the goals work, and when you enter them online, this is the kind of stuff that you'll be entering. Okay, tips on goals. Make your data targets challenging but reachable. You want to be successful. You don't want to make them too easy because then you won't feel like you accomplished anything. So challenging but reachable. And then also remember that lots of people can implement activities to help you reach those targets. So it would be great to engage teachers in doing activities, parents in doing activities, community organizations. So it's not just limited to you, but how can you really get the whole community engaged in helping kids make that choice? Okay, so on the next slide, you're writing in your priority goal data, so student group, choice, and then you'll type in during the meeting the current data and the target data. And then finally, capacity check. Given the resources available, including time, do we have the capacity for implementing activities that will address each of our priority goals in an effective way so we can reach our targets? If the answer is no, then you've got to get additional resources, additional time, additional funding, whatever. Or if you don't think you have the capacity for hitting all those priority goals, get rid of some of the goals. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. And also, if you do, you're giving everybody the impression that you can deliver something that you can't deliver. So this is a check for you more than anybody, for you to say, wait a minute, can I really do all this? Can our counselors do all this? If the answer is no, you have to have an honest discussion here with your advisory council and say, I don't think I can do 3, let's maybe do 1 priority goal. So, okay. Looking ahead then, this is information that you want to share with your advisory council. At the next meeting, you're going to talk about the root causes for those priority goals, what's getting in the way. This will help you understand why students aren't making those choices that you want them to make. And before that meeting, so you're giving people a heads up, before your next meeting, they will receive an email with links to student data that will help explain why kids aren't making those choices. And the instructions will ask them to write down ideas on sticky notes that they'll bring back to your next meeting. So I suggest that at this meeting you give them a little pack of 30, 40 sticky notes. The 3" by 3" is a good size to take with them so that when you send them the email, they already have sticky notes and can use those. Just looking ahead, here's what they're going to be writing on those sticky notes. They're going to be looking through all the data reports at home from the survey, and they're going to be saying on a sticky note, here's the priority goal that this impacts, I got this information from the guidance report, and here's something that might be a root cause. In the sample there, if my goal is to increase the percentage of graduates who complete an AP course, my root cause might be students aren't even sure if our school offers college-level courses. I mean, that would definitely be a root cause if kids aren't taking AP. So, and then finally they write their initials down. So they'll come back to your next meeting with, 10 or so of these, or 20 of these little sticky notes filled out, and then we'll use that at the next meetings to identify your root causes. So the reason we're pointing this out now is you're going to send them the data as an email attachment or an email link, but they won't have the physical sticky sheets. So rather than forcing everybody to go out and buy them, you could pass them out at this meeting for them to use. Just tell them to hold on to them. Okay, and then looking ahead at the meeting 5, the final meeting, once we know what the root causes are, then we'll identify activities for addressing those root causes that are impacting our priority goals. So, okay, that's that. Let's look online real quickly. I know that we're over our time, so I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. Okay, here we go. And if I go to the manual tab, I'm going to get again the handouts for this meeting and then the tools to help you do this meeting, including all of those infographics. I'm going to click on the process tab. Oops. There we go. I'm clicking on the process tab, and I'm going to scroll down to priority goals. Okay, so in this section, let's just go through the steps. You're going to watch the webcast if you need to. It's what we're recording right now. Then you're going to upload the counselor time use logs. Okay, so we've been collecting the counselor time use logs all year. What you need to upload is 2 logs for each of your counselors, one from first semester and one from second semester. And also those pages need to be all in one document. So if you can scan documents, just scan in, your first counselor's first semester log, and then as the second page to that scanned document, their second semester log, and then the next counselor's first semester and second semester. All of those logs need to go into one document because you can only upload one thing. So just scan them all into one PDF is probably the easiest way to do that. Then in this row, edit the counselor time use percentages. When you were setting up the survey, we asked you, the counselor, to identify, to estimate what percentage of your time you were spending on each of those tasks: guidance, counseling, advocacy, and management. So this is just a section, now that you've actually done a study and you've got data from time use logs, we want you to go back in and update the guess that you made when you were setting up the survey. So if you just click on enter, that'll bring up the guess that you made, and then based on your time use logs for your department, you can enter that in there. Then this gives you a place where you can enter your non-program activities that will allow you to print out that report of non-program activities so you're ready to go. And let me show you real quickly how to do that. When I'm entering activities, we're going to, and when you open this up, there won't be anything here. You're going to enter an activity. And at this point, we're only doing non-program activities, so maybe you're in charge of book rental, which I was in charge of when I first became a school counselor. So you're describing the task as book rental coordinator, blah, blah, blah. Then activity type. And notice what happens. You've got places where you can enter goals and indicators and all this student stuff. When I say that this is a non-program activity, all of that disappears because non-program activities don't help kids do anything. So you're saying, when do you do this? August and September. Who does it? When you click this, all of your steering team members will come up here. If it's somebody that's not listed here, just write their name in, enter it there, and then the computer will save that person's name, and then just save or save and add another non-program activity. save and return to the activities page, or you can also delete an activity. So this time we're just entering the non-program activities. Okay, so we're entering non-program activities, we're conducting Advisory Council Meeting 4, we're uploading the resource action plan. Notice that this is an uploader button, so you're going to upload the Word document. You're entering the priority goals, and this is, I think, kind of neat. When I do the enter there, what that's going to do, first of all, if I want to look at all of the program goals, here's a place where you can get that report. Then I'm going to select the priority goals. Remember, the priority goals are a subset of your program goals. So I'm going to click on enter, and this report takes a little bit of time because it's putting together a ton of data. All of your program goals will appear here, and you just simply click on the ones that you want to be priority goals, and let's just say I'm just going to have one priority goal, submit. I want my juniors to plan to submit a FAFSA. Then I'm going to save, and that is saving. And then I'm going to go back. Oops. Oops. Okay, so I've got my priority goals, enter my priority goals, and oh, here it is. Sorry, it was right there and I couldn't see it. So this is a two-step process. First, we're selecting the priority goals, and then we're entering the priority goals data. So I click that, and I can see here that plan to submit my free application for financial aid. This is pulling up survey data from the past 3 years. And in my dummy school, I didn't have students take the survey in 2010, so I'm just getting N is less than 10. But for you guys, there will be data from 2010, 2011, 2013, and then you need to put in what the target would be. So I'm going to put in my target as whatever, 50%, and then this is going to be in the spring when I survey next year, spring of 2014, and just save that. And that's how you enter the program goals. But remember that it is it's a two-step process. You have to enter the goal, and then you have to enter the data for that goal. Back on this page, if you've entered the goal but you forget to put the data in, you're going to get a little red message here that says, oops, you've got priority goals in, but you don't have data in for them yet. So just kind of give you a heads up that you forgot to put in the data for your priority goals. Okay, then the last thing is the meeting minutes, and then reviewing the rubric items. So, almost finished. Let's go through the rubric items. There's a couple other things here. I just mention this so that if you need to, you can come back and pause on this slide and look at it. But this is how to calculate the time percentages. Here's how to calculate the number of counselors, the counselor to student ratio. There's how to calculate that. And then here's how to find the data on the perceptions of the school counselors. So you're going to RSC online system, click on Program Data tab, then click on Data Reports, and then you're looking for, if you're a high school, you're looking for the student survey link. That will take you to the Learn More survey. If you're elementary school, you're just clicking on the perceptions link. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, here's the rubric. So the resources action plan, that's one thing that is being looked at by your reviewers for RAMP and Gold Star. So the action plan includes activities designed to gain resources for the school counseling program, and a data target or a target situation is included, like you want to increase your percentage of time with kids and parents to 80%, or you want to increase your funding by $50, or or whatever. And then on priority goals, it's just simply that one or more priority goals have been identified, and a second one there is that the data target has been entered for each of the priority goals. And then the meeting, the rubric items for your meeting minutes, same as it has been the last couple meetings. Okay, I'm sorry we went over. I know that I always try to end when we say we're going to, because I know that you're all really busy. So I'm not seeing any hands up. Feel free to give me a call when you get to this point if you need help. We have people in our office that can help you with that. And I think that's it. So everybody have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And remember, there is no webinar in January. So our next webinar is, get my calendar out real quickly, is February 4th. So we'll see everybody on February 4th, and I hope when we meet again that you all will have caught up, and also you'll have great stories to tell us about how you were able to expand resources so that you could really tackle priority goals. So thank you very much, and as always, please remember that you make a difference in the lives of your students.